Hello to all of you. Well, it's another webinar, and for those of you online last night, lots of information that's being shared. It's awesome to have so many of you online, and specifically from your perspective, David, where are you at the moment?
I am in the Cayman Islands, where I keynoted the D10E conference here. It is an itinerant blockchain conference that brings us in incredible places, and I'm happy to meet all of you from here, as you can see from my background as well.
Awesome, and we've also got Kevin down in Cape Town. So as some people don't know all over the world, but Cape Town might be the first city to actually run out of water. So we're talking a lot tonight about exponential technologies, and that's definitely a city that needs a solution. So welcome, Kevin.
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, behind me, it looks like I've got a bamboo forest, but that's not how it's looking at the moment. Yeah, it's a bit drier. But yes, good evening.
Awesome. So I want to get started this evening. You know, we've had a lot of conversations around exponential technologies. We've had a lot of conversations around Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain. And if you haven't watched the webinar that we did last year, I highly recommend going where David Orban and Richard Titus and Michael Turpin went into some of the lessons that have been learned and also their projections on where 2018 was going. Obviously, we're a month into this year already, and the purpose of tonight was to really dig deep into exponential technologies. And we're very, very privileged to have someone of David Orban's, ilk and recognition and authority around the world. You know, he was the first person to invest in Ether. He's a venture capitalist. His company is called Network Society Ventures. He's a faculty member on this Singularity University, and he's also a global authority in blockchain and crypto. And when I saw him recently in Vegas, he showed me his schedule, and I think you fly more than most airline pilots do, David, in terms of sharing your knowledge around the world.
Next week, just FYI, I will be speaking at conferences in Amsterdam, Milan, and Barcelona, and then onwards. One of the interesting ones coming up in March, right before, and I hope I'm not giving away a kind of a spoiler, I am actually coming down to South Africa, is going to be in Puerto Rico, which is a really in an interesting place in terms of having had the hurricane really destroy the existing infrastructure previously. So the question is, what kind of new infrastructure should be in place instead?
Yep. No, look, I completely agree, and I think that's one of the things I'm excited about. I realized I wasn't sharing my screen there, so just for those of you who hadn't seen it, that's the front screen of this webinar for us getting started tonight. And again, this is David and some of his credentials. But I think what we should do tonight is just get into a little bit of an intro and then get straight into trying to understand from David's knowledge why he is so respected around the world in some of these areas. I wanted to share with you just some ideas, 5 important things that you need to know. And if I'm not going to teach you about it tonight, but just so that you understand it. There's a big difference between a linear and exponential. So most people and companies are born to be linear, and that we were all programmed to be sort of linear and local. And where the world's going now is global and exponential. And I love this little very simple graph, because for a long time, the linear companies of the world, the Kodaks, the Coca-Colas, the IBMs, the Microsofts, have continued to build, nice, good linear companies. They every year on year, they grow and they generate profits. And then you've had these tech sort of platforms, these exponential companies. And for a long time, they've been disappointing, often not profitable. Companies like Amazon is a good example. And now they're really starting to go through to a whole nother level where people are really starting to understand what is the potential and where the future is going. And I tend to say to people, there's only 2 ways that the future is going to be. It's either going to be amazement, where you take advantage of exponential technology, or it's going to be chaos, where it completely disrupts your life. The second thing that I think is important here is, sorry, Kevin's taught me how to do this a little bit quicker. The second thing that's really important is actually blockchain. And I really want to play you this video. It's 2 minutes long. I really would appreciate if you listen to it and think to yourself, what impact would blockchain have in my life based on this video? You enjoyed that quick little video, and I hope that you can really start to see now the importance of blockchain and the impact that it's going to have on your life. The third thing that I wanted to just discuss is Bitcoin. In 2017, there was this massive run on Bitcoin. Everyone around the world suddenly woke up to what Bitcoin was. It didn't get invented in 2017. It's been around since 2008. And yet sort of the mass market started to get an understanding of what it was, and it caused a huge growth. But we've also had a correction. And we're going to talk a lot about this tonight, you know, these hype cycles and what happens and where it's going. The last thing that I wanted to show you was what started with Bitcoin, then moved on to what they call ICOs. Now, they stand for initial coin offerings. And really, these were blockchain-based companies that went out, and 20 years ago, they called it an IPO. You know, it's a little bit different, but effectively an ICO is people that invest in coins to really be able to grow the company. Now, what's interesting is that they reckon that ICOs and crypto are going to be bigger than VC put together. And there's a lot of research out there that more money was raised in 2017 through this mechanism than through the traditional venture capitalists. But I wanted to share a little video with you. Again, it's about 1 minute long, where you can literally see the growth of ICOs over the last 4 years. So Kevin, this one doesn't have any music or sound, so I suggest we just play it directly. So you can see here in 2014, you know, you've literally got what's that, about 30-something million dollars. You can see Ethereum comes in the year of 2014. They raised $19 million. Now we're going into the year of 2015. You can see in the top left corner the money that's being raised per year. So in the year of 2015, it's pretty much getting up to, what's that, 44, call it 45 million. Now we go into the year of 2016. You can start to see more ICOs coming. You can also see what countries they're coming from. So now we're up to, what's that, just over $300 million. Now what happened? Now watch what happens in 2017. I think, David, that's the lead-in for yourself, you know, because when we look at ICOs, when we look at blockchain, when we look at Bitcoin and all the other exponential technologies, they talk a lot about the 6Ds and how the very first stage is digitization. So when you think of Bitcoin as an example, effectively it's digitized money. There's been a very deceptive phase. It started in 2008, and quite frankly, till 2016, not a lot of people cared about it. And now it's getting, you know, quite disruptive. And with time, it's going to dematerialize, demonetize, and democratize. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is how can we actually democratize wealth. And I really want you to remember this diagram, because a lot of you will think that these are not big trends. They're not going to affect your life. Blockchain, as an example, is not going to affect your life. But it's very much in the deceptive phase. And you really, truly need to concentrate tonight as we move on to David and really start to get an understanding of why these things are so important. So my first question for you, David, is, you know, why is blockchain a game changer? A lot of people talk about how important it is, but, you know, why do you think it's so important?
When the internet was born, a lot of people discounted its importance, and they thought, okay, it was a technical gimmick. I could fairly ignore it. They were half-heartedly debating, you know, what is this @ and the .coms and whatnot. That phenomenon, which at the peak of what we today call the .com bubble was $3 trillion of public companies building the internet, was an exclusively Silicon Valley phenomenon. Today, blockchain is a global revolution, which is laying the groundwork for the next 20 years of technology explosion that we are going to see, built by teams that are not based in Silicon Valley, that are in Shanghai, in Mumbai, in Cape Town or Johannesburg, everywhere in the world. And the soundness of the technology, regardless of the technical details that some of us may not have the patience or the time or the availability to get into, is proven very simply by the fact that Bitcoin's money is there. If it were not a sound technology, Bitcoin's money would be stolen.
So in terms of, you know, where you see things going, and Kevin, please jump in if there's anything from your perspective that you think is important. You know, one of the things that I think is really important is that a lot of people don't truly understand this, and I think it's important, David, to focus on it. And that is the difference between blockchain and Bitcoin.
Obviously. So there have been a lot of precursors to the first successful electronic decentralized money. We've had credit cards for 70 years. Still, there are some countries that if you get into a taxi cab, you'd better ask the driver if he accepts credit cards before you start your ride. So it is not surprising that even though Bitcoin has been around for almost 10 years, still it is, as you have mentioned, that wonderfully succinct chart, is in its deceptive phase. A lot of big financial institutions believe they can safely ignore it. Bitcoin is an application of the underlying technology we call blockchain, similarly to how email is the application, or web browsing is an application on top of the technology stack we call internet. And Bitcoin can be used for paying for things, can be used as a store of value for some people who say, I set aside some money and then cross my fingers that Bitcoin's exchange rate goes up rather than down. But it is important to keep an eye on the evolution and the strengthening of the underlying technology. When email was king and that was the only application of the internet, many people wouldn't have imagined the things we are doing now. This webinar is made possible by the internet technology, by ubiquitous broadband, and it is science fiction worthy. So we will have science fiction worthy applications of blockchain that are going to be as exciting and exhilarating as being able to talk to our audience today from all over the world.
And you know, on that note, I just want to point out, and I'll talk more about it at the end of the webinar, but the next webinar that Kevin, David, and myself are doing, which is fascinating, is the parallels between the internet boom and bust and what came out of it, and what we can learn from the cryptocurrency boom, possibly bust, and where they lie. So that's the 6th of February, which I highly recommend. The other thing is that there is a chat button there. So if you've got any questions, just fire away, and we'll either answer them online or we'll take questions in terms of where we're at. So if we take blockchain as a game changer, what's really interesting is that some of the mainstream companies are getting involved. You know, I've got the picture here of Kodak. You can also, I don't quite understand this one, to be honest, but you've got the Big Mac, you know, the Big Mac coin, and even you've got Telegram, which recently has come out, and I've heard they're looking to raise as much as over $1 billion. And I don't know how true this is, David, but one of our board members tried to invest, and the minimum investment was $20 million, and he got declined because it was oversubscribed. Again, I don't know how much truth there is in that, but my point being is that why are these mainstream companies now getting involved, firstly in blockchain, and secondly in the cryptocurrency sort of ICO space?
So I am a bit skeptical about, for example, Kodak coin, right? Kodak today is not even the company that has dominated the photography industry for 100 years, because that company went bankrupt. Kodak today is the new owner of the brand and the logo and probably the patents. It is totally a shame, because Kodak invented digital photography without truly believing in it. And it was killed by the exponential growth of digital photography on our phones and everywhere else with performance that was more than enough for 90% of the people who stopped buying the cameras that were using Kodak films. Now, is it likely that they are going to truly believe in the power of blockchain and reorganize not only, you know, a marketing operation around it, but reorganize their business model, how they relate to their various stakeholders? In my opinion, the likelihood of this happening is minimal. Now, we will have hopefully the opportunity of talking more about what it means to have a decentralized business model, what it means to truly adopt a blockchain strategy. Now, the second example that you are showing is, you know, I don't know enough about it, especially as an investor. I look at the teams. You know, the reason I invested in Wealth Migrate is because I know you guys, I know that you can execute. I know that your ideas are sound and that you have the ability to turn them into reality and change the world as a consequence. I don't know the Big Mac Coin team, and I don't want to pretend that I can judge what they are doing. It is hard for me to say that it is not something very, very stupid.
What about this one, though?
The third example that you gave is challenging because Telegram is hugely successful. Telegram has the power to be decentralized. In some ways, it already is, because the encryption communication that it enables does not depend on the knowledge of a centralized server that holds your encryption keys. So it can be confirmed that they get it, right? Now, do they need the $1 billion? No. They do not need the $1 billion. They are doing a $1 billion ICO because they can. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it will be something for the Telegram ICO investors to find out, you know, in a year's time or in 2 years' time, when the Telegram token will be more or less valuable than they paid. My guess is that it will be worth less, and I hope to be wrong. And my guess is that the main thing that Telegram is going to do with the tokens is something not extremely, creative. And the main thing that they will do with the money they collect is to establish investment funds to enrich the Telegram ecosystem by giving money to developers to build for the Telegram platform. And that's fine. If you as an investor don't want to make the decisions, but you want to delegate those decisions to somebody else, right? So that is also okay. You know, we have our own investors as a venture firm, and they delegate the decisions to us. Nothing wrong with that. And the question whether this is all good or less so is how clearly this is articulated in the Telegram white paper, which is today's equivalent to what used to be the business plan. And it is a very transparent document that anybody purchasing tokens should use to hold the team accountable for what they promised, because they have to execute on that promise as they implement the white paper's roadmap.
Last question quickly before I move on, and it's to do with big business, is that a lot of the banks have really, in the last 2 years, they've really sort of embraced blockchain. They realized the immense potential that it can bring to banking. Are you aware of anything that's of relevance for people to know within the banking sector? Because it's interesting. It's sort of the Kodaks of the world are trying to employ the new technology.
So if you are aware of banks that really genuinely embrace blockchain and Bitcoin, absolutely let me know, because I am not really. In the sense that they always talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. There are all these consortia of banks that actually confuse people by talking about private blockchains, as if private blockchains were necessary, because they don't know what is good and what is bad and what is right and what is wrong. And the public blockchain is this dangerous, wild world that you shouldn't really trust. You should trust them, because they are the ones telling you what should be done. So I don't think that is a healthy way of going about things, and I really so I am expecting that there will be an explosion of new things we may call banks, and I expect these to come out of both the blockchain world as well as in those areas of the world where, through actually regulation, financial institutions are forced to become a platform that you can build applications on top of. And one of these areas of the world, surprisingly, is Europe, where this year a new regulation comes into force that requires banks actually to become application platforms that anybody can leverage to build exciting new ways of serving their customers.
Wow.
David, someone just put in a question here, EJ, saying, what about Ripple? Is this not something banks have embraced? Do you have any comments on that?
So Ripple itself was born of an original project that split, and then they are going about doing a very good execution of engineering tasks, of working together with banking institutions and letting them upgrade their technological platforms that are absolutely antiquated. You know, the SWIFT transfer system that requires people to take over a transaction and then type it into another terminal is incredibly primitive, to the point that the Bangladesh Central Bank was running the risk of losing an incredible amount of money because somebody has been able to hack this old-fashioned system. So from that point of view, Ripple is good. From the point of view of people who, like me, believe in the power of decentralization and of the public blockchains, Ripple is pretty much meaningless because it is not running on a public blockchain. The mania around the exchange rate between Ripple and the US dollar that increased Ripple's network value is, in my opinion, unjustified, because Ripple controls their ability to issue more Ripple. The founders of Ripple own an excessive percentage of Ripple, and the whole thing is not coherent with the spirit that should be driving new applications of blockchain.
So guys, if we look at these exponential technologies, you know, and my next question would be, what impact do you think exponential technology is going to have in the next 20 years? You spend a huge amount of time traveling all over the world and sharing with people. You know, blockchain is literally one of many exponential technologies. What impact do you think it's going to have on people? You know, we're talking a lot tonight around exponential technology, blockchain, cryptocurrency. But I really want to get a sense, David, from your perspective as to what impact you think it's going to have in people's lives and whether they really need to pay attention to what's happening.
So as I keynote conferences from Asia to Europe to America, really one of my goals, and the reason I'm invited, is to put radical, important transformations in a broader context. When people hear artificial intelligence and robotics and self-driving cars and CRISPR and biotech and genetics and blockchain and fintech and clean tech, and they very rightly say, oh my God, I need to shut all this out because I cannot handle it. Unfortunately, they cannot afford not to handle it. So they need a thread that can guide them to attach understanding to each of these apparently separate pieces of message that they receive. All of the technologies that I listed are exponential. What it means is that just like our computers in the late 70s, they start out incredibly weak and powerless, and only those who care a lot will dedicate their time and effort to use them. But then they become incredibly powerful, extremely affordable, and so easy to use that everybody will employ them for many different ways. You know, the phones that we carry around are real supercomputers in our pockets, many times more powerful than the computers that brought us to the moon. So the same mechanisms that created this change in the past 20, 30, 40 years are going to impact transportation, energy, the construction business, manufacturing, health, food, agriculture, security, policymaking, learning, and value creation, the enterprise, and the definition of work. And the reason my firm is called Network Society Ventures, and it is part of a group of companies that I created, and think tank and all Network Society something, is because I believe that the consequence of all of these technologies is going to be decentralization. Just like,
well, I mean, can we move on to that, David? Because you mentioned talking about a decentralized business model and effectively a blockchain business model. And I think because these technologies allow this to happen, and I agree with you where it's going. And I'd love to just share your thoughts on that.
So yes, let me give you a few examples. Solar energy is available everywhere on the planet. And it actually doesn't matter where you are. A lot of people say, oh, I wish I could take advantage of solar energy, but my home is wherever. It is not exposed well, or I'm in Norway, it's dark 6 months out of the year. I cannot take advantage of solar energy. Not true. You can use platforms to invest in solar and then stream the solar energy value via Bitcoin to your digital wallet. Or manufacturing, where 3D printing makes it possible for enterprises and consumers to take advantage of advanced manufacturing capabilities without the need of sending an order for 1 million gizmos to the Chinese that takes 6 months to deliver. It can be produced on demand right where you are. Or peer-to-peer learning, where because of the speed of change, including blockchain technology, it is much more important to connect with other people and learn from each other and from each other's mistakes than not rely on a single central authority that pretends to know everything while they do not. You know, there is no university where you can go and get a master's degree in Bitcoin. It just doesn't exist. And it cannot exist because by the time they would create that master's degree, Bitcoin moved on, and it is now something so different that they have to go back to the drawing board. So that is why doing what you are doing, Scott, absorbing the pieces of knowledge that you go on and share immediately with your peers, with the wealth partners, is so incredibly valuable. And I wish they did the same. You know, I wish you had wealth partners that did webinars, because you inspired them and had dinners and just really got excited about what the world offers today.
Well, David, it's a great interlude into the next question, but I would say two things there. The one is that, you know, talking a lot about exponential technologies over the next month and a half, we're going to be doing 4 more webinars with you, actually going into some of the details. The second thing is, it's a great idea, David. We should really create a coin called Wealthy Coin and incentivize people to do those presentations and dinners, like you said. but tongue in cheek there. My fourth question is, what do you think of Bitcoin? You know, there's a lot of debate at the moment that Bitcoin was sort of the first horse out of the gates and won't necessarily finish the race. Where do you see Bitcoin, you know, 5 or 10 years? Is it going to remain the sort of the core stable currency in the crypto world, or is it technologically challenged?
So Bitcoin is both metaphorically and literally a symbol. It is metaphorically a symbol. It is because it represents the first successful application of blockchain, still the most important in terms of network value when you compare it to other coins and tokens. And it inspires so many people. It is literally a symbol because BTC represents a given protocol that is evolving, with the code constantly being refined by developers. But what protocol and what version of the code is labeled BTC is just a question of choice. And it constantly happens, and we call them forks, that a group of Bitcoin developers gets angry enough not to want to reach what we call consensus with the rest of the Bitcoin developers, and in a huff goes off and says, okay, now I'm calling this Bitcoin Gold, now I'm calling this Bitcoin Cash, now I'm calling this Bitcoin whatever, Cayman Islands. And it is perfectly fine. Rather than getting into a war where we need to kill each other, now we found a way to have the market work it out. And then basically it is going to be the case that the winning version is going to be called Bitcoin. And you know, everybody else will say, oh yeah, of course, that is Bitcoin. Doesn't matter. So these variations create an incredibly rapid evolution. And this evolution is reflected in the network value. So my prediction is that whatever the underlying code, whatever the winning developer group, Bitcoin is here to stay. Bitcoin is going to be increasing in its value for a long time. I have been telling people to believe in blockchain and Bitcoin, and they would come back to me and say, oh my God, David, you've been telling me this for so long. Now Bitcoin is $10, it's too late. And then they would come back and they would tell me, oh my God, David, this is maybe the same people. You've been telling me this for so long. Now it's Bitcoin is $100, it's too late. Now it's $1,000, it's too late. Bitcoin is now $10,000 or more, and it is not too late. Both because a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to buy an entire Bitcoin. You can buy a fraction. You know, if you have $100 that you want to risk in this crazy thing, you can. And because it really is a very healthy Ponzi scheme. You know, rather than a Ponzi scheme that scams everybody, the spread through evangelists like me of Bitcoin and blockchain creates value for people. And this value is what is reflected in the price of Bitcoin. It is not based on nothing. It is really based on how many people find it useful. And of course, in the meantime, there will be ups and downs, and some of them will be pretty dramatic, and nobody should panic unless they want to, because it is luckily everybody's freedom and everybody's choice to do what they want, either entering into learning about Bitcoin or exiting and saying, oh my God, my uncle was right, this is a scam.
Well, I'm going to put this article, because funny you spoke about a Ponzi scheme. I get asked that quite a lot, and I actually found this article while I was doing some research. So I'll put it in the chat box for those that want to look at it. So, David, one thing that just before I move on to the next question that I think is important there, and something I only learned in the last basically 12 months, was that when Bitcoin sort of forked and went off with Bitcoin Cash, anyone that owned Bitcoin got the same amount in Bitcoin Cash. And so sort of what you're saying is that you actually win both ways, and you sort of hedge your bets in both directions, which I found interesting. Now obviously if you're only getting in now, you've got to choose now between Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash as an example. But again, it's that example of getting in earlier. So the question I've got for you is, I learned something very, very valuable in Vegas at Coin Agenda now in January around why the value rose so much in 2017. But before I share that, what is your thoughts on why there was such tremendous growth, not just in Bitcoin, but in cryptocurrencies in general?
So it really goes back to the fact that Bitcoin is an unstoppable global phenomenon based on an unstoppable global technology. During the Arab Springs, the Egyptian army decided that they want to stop the revolution to coordinate via Facebook and Twitter by shutting down the internet. And they shut down the internet for 2 days before turning it back on, because they realized that they wouldn't only kill the revolution, they would kill the country. It is a little bit like saying, oh, the revolution needs water, so let's stop water from everybody. They cannot drink. You die. So Bitcoin and the blockchain on top of which Bitcoin is based is becoming a little bit like the internet and water. It is everywhere, it is unstoppable, and it is more and more essential for more and more vital components of a 21st century business, society, and civilization.
So it's really, really fascinating. The question, we had this quite interesting last night. We were talking a lot about economics and actually fiat currencies. And, the question a lot of people are asking is, should I wait or should I invest? Now, to some extent, you've already answered that because people were asking you when it was $10. But what are your thoughts on A, a market correction, and B, whether people should participate or wait, or what do you suggest? And again, this is not financial advice. It's just based on your opinion.
I'm not a day trader, even though I have friends who have this fascinating capacity of reading self-fulfilling superstitions out of squiggly lines on screens that other people similar to them interpret in similar ways. And so I don't know where Bitcoin will be in tomorrow or in a week, maybe even a month. But I believe that Bitcoin and blockchain in general will be more and more valuable. More and more people will learn about them, use them on a daily basis in various applications, maybe even without realizing. Just like a lot of people don't know how the internet works, but they still use WhatsApp and email and Facebook. So Is there going to be some kind of correction? Well, there has already been a big correction, right? For a brief amount of time in December, Bitcoin was $20,000, and now it is half that amount. And there have been similar corrections in the past. That is an interesting feature of exponential change, that if you zoom out, or rather, if you look at the largest possible view, that, you know, from 2008 to 2018, actually Bitcoin didn't have a price for some time, so you cannot go to 2008. Whatever it is, you will see a given kind of squiggly growth. But if you then zoom in and you look at what was happening, you know, when Mt. Gox failed and a given amount of money disappeared, $400 million or something like that at the time, at the failure of the then dominating exchange. Well, you look at what happened then, and it is a similar graph that you see. So next time, when Bitcoin is at $100,000, yeah, maybe it will come back down to 50,000, right? But the people who bought in at 10,000 will and have steely nerves, so that they don't panic and they say, okay, it does whatever it does, and I am still, rather than 10 times up, I am 5 times up. When it is 50,000 and it goes through a trough, they will say, okay, now it is increasing again. So I think that down from 20,000 to 10,000 now, we are actually at a place where I am happy to buy. And if it goes down again, I just buy more.
It's interesting. It's interesting, David. I found this yesterday. It was actually in that article I just shared. And it's amazing. It says, you know, wise people are buying at 0.1. Then the market's rising, people are panicking, they're selling, and wise people are buying again over here. And my point being is that it's really fascinating, again, that hype cycle. And also something I literally read in the last 6 months is that if you look statistically, Bitcoin has often lost at least 50% of its value, and then it recovers. And the next time it rises, it goes higher than the previous time in terms of where it is. So it's interesting, the cycles. You know, I haven't been in, but I wish I could tell you I'd been in Bitcoin for years and years and years, but just even in the last year or so, that's really been true to form in terms of what hasn't actually happened, you know. I mean, even now, you said it's gone from 20 back to 10, and it sort of hovered around 10. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. We were on a webinar last night with a guy that does, he basically takes sentiment forecasts, and I've worked with him for more than 10 years, and he's unbelievably accurate when it comes to predictions. And he reckons that it's going to rise somewhere to closer to $40,000 or $50,000, and then there's going to be a massive correction. So it's just interesting, you know, his take on the charts, which sort of brings me pretty well through to, you know, what risks are you looking out for in 2018? Yes, sorry, Kevin.
Before you move on to that, you did mention that you spoke to someone in Vegas about the price rise in 2017, and you said you were going to tell a story, and you never did. Can you remember that story? We have a few people asking.
Good point, Kevin. So it was actually Michael Turpin that spoke about it, and it's something I didn't know. But every 5 years, it gets twice as hard to mine Bitcoin. So in 2016, at the end of 2016, I don't know the exact technical term, but effectively, they halve the ability to. So for the same power, it takes double the amount of power to get the same amount of Bitcoin. And they do that every 5 years. So it happened first in 2011, it happened again in 2016. It's going to happen again in 2021. And what was interesting to me is I thought it was purely based on supply and demand in 2017, and just really a lot more people getting in the market, which it very much was. But also what they did is it constrained supply further, which effectively is simple economics, which is something I learned literally in the last month, which I found absolutely fascinating. Does that answer your question, Kevin?
Yes, I don't know, David, if you want to just comment on that.
Well, it is actually a very good point, because it contrasts Bitcoin, which is truly controlled by an algorithm that can only be changed when there is an incredibly broad consensus that doesn't need to be universal, but there has to be a consensus around users, miners, developers, application developers, with other tokens and currencies that are much more centrally controlled. Bitcoin has a limited, predictable supply, and this predictability has always been the champion of financial soundness. That is what financial markets want, predictability, right? Now, of course, that doesn't reflect in the predictability of the Bitcoin price, which is the consequence of many, many other factors. But the fact that you don't have to read the tea leaves of cryptic sentences from central bankers with respect to what they are going to do, and it is totally up to their saintly decisions that are impossible to criticize or even to understand, and they are not beholden to anybody to explain the reasons deeply of those decisions. The Bitcoin supply is absolutely known from now for basically ever, and that is very, very healthy, very healthy. So back to your question, Scott, around the risk factors. The biggest risk factor for the entire industry is regulatory, because some people are honest enough to say, wow, I am fascinated, and there are consequences that I just cannot really work out, but I'm fine with that because I believe in the importance of the broad mission, and I will do my best to navigate what is happening, and my project and what I'm doing is really important for the world, so I want to keep working on it. On the other hand, there are people who are paid to pretend that they know what is best for everybody else, and they must impose their views on everybody else, and they must pretend that they know all the consequences, as unimaginable as they are, for the world, and they are called regulators. And unfortunately, that means that they will impose their views, doesn't matter if they are wrong, on these new industries that need to mature, which is a synonym to say they are not in a rapid growth phase anymore. We know what is going on. That is what you call maturity. The blockchain industry is not mature yet, but the regulators are freaking out. They are in a state of panic because they are not controlling things anymore. It used to be the case that barriers to entry to financial markets or other ways of creating wealth were universal and universally enforced. Today, blockchain is lowering or eliminating these barriers, and the gatekeepers don't want the unwashed masses to share the benefit of what they have been protecting for a select few until now. Some of those people are totally honest, but others are really defending the interest of an extremely small number of beneficiaries of world model, of a world economic model that the blockchain is upending.
David, there's Wayne here has said, you know, this is a global phenomenon. So who's going to determine which regulators we essentially look at? Because the US is going to try to regulate it, the UK, in Asia, and China, Japan. But blockchain essentially is something that is, well, it's decentralized, it's global. So how do you think that's going to play out?
The US has proven to have pretensions of being the global police force of the world, both in waging wars for the past 50 years. Basically, any war in the world was waged by the United States of America. Other wars were civil wars rather than foreign armies fighting. And also, they have shown to be ready to apply irresistible pressure on other nations to serve the U.S. interests. And the best example of this is in peer-to-peer technology, where Kim.com, the founder of Mega Upload, a New Zealand citizen, was arrested at 3 a.m. in the morning when a SWAT team broke down the door of his home because a United States court believed that his system violated copyright. And they used the New Zealand SWAT teams as the executioner of a non-final judicial order. It was mind-blowingly illegal, but they still did it. And the Prime Minister of New Zealand had to apologize after the fact publicly for violating the civil rights of Mr. And so I believe that the United States is going to try it again. So it is going to be up to other jurisdictions to be strong enough that if their regulators want to welcome the blockchain revolution and token sales under frameworks that correspond to the strategies that they want to employ, as a sovereign nation, they shouldn't be forced to do otherwise. Yeah. Even though in the community of blockchain, a lot of people are happy to actually say that nation states matter less and less. And that is why there is a veritable jurisdictional arbitrage going on, where token sales happen in Singapore or Switzerland or in any other jurisdiction that at a given time is ready to embrace the radical change that blockchain represents.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Winston's also just mentioned that in South Korea, of course, they've sort of try to clamp down a little bit, just making sure that KYC, so know your client, is taking place and that people are actually sharing their details. And if you actually look at most exchanges, they require this now, which I think isn't a bad thing. It essentially, I guess, gets rid of bad actors. But those sort of regulations are one thing, but really clamping down on the ability for the blockchain to be decentralized and work is something completely different.
There's one other comment on that I think is important, and that history often repeats itself. And what most people don't realize is that America grew from too many feudal controls happening in Europe, and so both people and money moved to Europe, where there was a much freer market. And I fundamentally agree with what both of you said. There will be new countries, there will be new regions, and if America, as an example, doesn't go with the future, then other markets will become, as important in the time to come. As I said, history repeats itself. I'm conscious of the time, and so let's look at the opportunities in 2018. You talk quite a lot about how you choose a winning ICO on the last webinar, David, and I really recommend people watching the recording of that. And I know Kevin has actually cut that recording up into 17 individual videos. So if you're interested in those videos, just type in there 17 and we can make sure you get them. And a good question we got asked last night was, which coins are you looking at? So, I'd just like to know what you're thinking going into 2018.
So I'm a seed stage investor looking at the intersection of exponential technologies and decentralization. And I like to find all over the world teams that work on empowering in an inclusive manner people through technology to be a protagonist in their own lives. And I believe that today's opportunities are for billions of people to be emancipated through technology in a way that we were not even able to dream of, and that this kind of emancipation is going to create new societies that fulfill the human potential at a higher degree than it was possible before. So translating this into concrete checklists is, if you wish, the secret sauce of my firm. And I am planning to actually publish this secret sauce because I believe in the possibility of coming together and apply the wisdom of the crowd to highlight what are the teams and what are the projects, and to be enthusiastic and open about them. Because I don't want to be the gatekeeper. I don't want to create exclusive access. I want to empower the projects that deserve the chance to win and change people's lives. Looking at the team, looking at the soundness of the idea, looking at their ability to execute, looking at the technologies they employ, the traction that potentially they already had, even though they are at a very early stage, and many other are the components of this investment decision process.
Awesome. So it brings me on. You spoke a lot about sort of how the world's changing and how we can from a technology perspective make the world a far better place. There's a lot of people that are terrified of where we're going, using things like artificial intelligence, etc. And I've heard you speak before, which I really enjoyed, around the minimum basic income and how you actually think that's wrong, but you've got a better solution. And I fundamentally believe we're very aligned in it, but I'd love just to go down this road because a lot of people supposedly have sleepless nights around where technology is taking us.
So definitely the human spirit needs a purpose. And today's social contract is predicated on an equation. You are worth something to society in proportion to the measure of your economic output. And if you are unemployed and society as a consequence measures your economic output 0, you are worthless. This social contract is contrary to the human spirit because each of us realize that it is just not true that you are worthless because of whatever happenstance you became unemployed. And the fact that today's society believes that there have to be some kind of arbitrary time frame for you to get your act together, otherwise you can go and die in a ditch, whether the time frame is 0 like in America or a year like in the Netherlands, whatever it is, does not take into account how rapidly skills are becoming obsolete. And if the lowest skill available today is flipping burgers, is getting automated as well, so that even that kind of fallback to create economic output is available to people anymore, or a greeter in a Walmart or whatever other kind of fake job, then the response by human beings not to accept that state of things is the right response. Because the social contract is not natural law. If I jump out of the 5th floor here and enjoy for a few seconds a beautiful view of the Cayman Islands, you know the joke, so far so good when you fall from whatever height. I can do that 1,000 times and the outcome is going to be all the same. Because gravity is a natural law, and if you stop believing in it, it is still going to be true. But if enough people stop believing in the social contract today, it will break. It will just stop being true. And so thinking deeply about what the new social contract should be and how to empower people and give them dignity is one of the most important things we all should be doing and keep doing without delegating them to the politicians who know as little as we do. That is not something we can afford to tell, oh, we elected them, so now it is up to them because they know. They don't know. It has to be a conversation that we keep opening up and reopening up, always questioning our assumptions, always questioning our dogmatic ways. Because society's changed in the past already. Up to a few hundred years ago, it was totally normal to have slaves. And today slavery is outlawed all over the world. We have come to the conclusion that owning other human beings was wrong. Isn't that magnificent? Isn't that uplifting? So we should ask ourselves, what are going to be the laughably dogmatic assumptions about today's society that tomorrow we will falsify, and happily so, because they will lead to human flourishing and thriving civilizations.
Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Cool. Thank you very much for that, David. Well, you know, guys, and ladies, if you've enjoyed the webinar tonight and getting some detail, and we're just getting started, the next one on the 6th of February is comparing the blockchain revolution with the internet revolution. We've then got another one on the 15th of February. How is blockchain, AI, IoT going to come together to change the world? You know, on the 7th of March, we're going to be looking at, with the rise of technology adoption, we're seeing many jobs disappear. What are the options? And really what we're talking about now, universal basic income, radical upskilling, mass unemployment, you know, what we've just touched on now, we're going to spend a whole webinar on. And then on the 14th of March, is blockchain going to change the world? And then what, you know, those are all webinars, so wherever you are in the world. The other thing that's quite exciting is that we've got a number of events, you know, around the world in terms of in Seoul, Manila, Tokyo, and Puerto Rico. And then David's actually coming live to South Africa as well. And we've got events in South Africa. And we've also got, for our wealth partners, and David's spoken of them, who are shareholders in the group, in the Global Wealth Group, we've actually got private dinners for the wealth partners with David on the 24th, 26th, and 28th in terms of where we're going. So just put those dates in your diary. David, you've answered this in you know, I don't think you need to go into a lot of detail here, but you were one of the first investors to invest in the Wealthy Coin and sort of the concept of who we are and what we're doing. Why did you and your investors make that decision?
So tokenizing a business today is an incredible opportunity for aligning the interests of the founders of a startup or a company that already has an established business with those of a new wave of investors, and to accelerate the growth, both in terms of financial availability and in terms of capacity to execute of the project. Also, from an investor point of view, the fact that the tokens are powering an application suite that is rippling through as an effect across the network, involving more and more people, is extremely important. Also, through the concept of utility tokens listed on exchanges. These tokens can be bought and sold both by the users of the application suite as well as by people who use their value and the expectation of value as well. Now, my view is that the Wealthy coin represents an important solution to a series of problems that without blockchain and without these new functionalities, without the uses that the people will make of the token in your platform would not be possible. And as a consequence, the Wealthy coin will be a true enabler of activities by the participants in your platform for years and hopefully decades to come. And you have been doing some wonderful things already in Wealth Migrate, enabling many people to participate in wealth creation through real estate. And the Wealthy coin is going to spread this, accelerate this to many, many more people while powering your applications.
Excellent, thank you, David. So just before I hand over to Tudor, I wanted to just quickly share some stuff with you. One of the things was, you know, when you hear about these exponentials and everything that's happening, David's already mentioned it can be quite overwhelming. I had an amazing experience 18 months ago where I was invited to Singularity University, where David is an alumni member. And I met this guy, Ray Kurzweil. Now, Ray Kurzweil, quite interestingly, is one of the most respected people in the world when it comes to actually, you know, what is happening in terms of future trends, et cetera, et cetera. He's had an accuracy of more than 86% over the last 30 years in predicting where technology is going. And if you want to, I can share this document with you, and you can actually see that I was very privileged to actually meet him. But one of the big takeaways I took was that he said, if you want to look for opportunity, you know, short-term opportunities are very difficult to predict. It's sort of what David was talking about being a day trader. But if you took a long-term trends and you look at the intersection of those long-term trends, that's where opportunity lies. And, you know, for me, what I wanted to share with you, if you take what David's been talking about tonight and what's really happening in the world, there's 8 major trends which are intersecting. The first one is gamification and learning while doing, which is going to fundamentally change the education system. The second one is blockchain and cryptocurrencies, which is increasing trust and reducing the friction costs massively. The third one is social commerce and collaborative investing, which is increasing returns and reducing risk. The fourth one is personalization. You know, people have had enough of big brands and being dealt with, you know, just the same as everyone else and being a number or even a piece of data. They want personal solutions for them and their families. They want, you know, to be able to create the freedom for them in their own lives, and they want to have a meaningful connection with their investments. There's a rise in the middle class. You know, in the emerging markets, there's over 3 billion people that are joining, you know, effectively being unbanked and are now joining the global economy. And there are hundreds of millions of people all around the world, particularly in the emerging world, that are joining the middle class through mobile adoption and internet connectivity. There's globalization. You know, people are no longer wanting the volatility of being stuck in one country. They want to be diversified across countries, assets, and currencies. It was previously only available to the wealthiest people out there. There's a lot of social pressure to democratize the access to wealth and allow the 99%. I mean, we just had the World Economic Forum and Davos has just happened again. And it's interesting, for another year running, the top 1% has actually increased in its percentage of wealth, and it's now up to 53% of the worldwide wealth is held by 1%. And then lastly, investors are wanting to have a purposeful impact on co-creating the planet. And you know what's really important is that if you take these 8 major trends, plus a lot of what David's referring to, and you look for the intersection points, that's where opportunity lies. And one of the things that we believe is that by 2020, these would have all intersected. And that's how we believe we can empower 1 billion people and go a long way to solving the wealth gap through using these trends and providing them with opportunities and solutions. You know, having been to a huge amount of events, I get asked a lot of the time, you know, what do you look for in a successful ICO? And I paraphrased what David and Michael Turpin and Richard Titus said in the webinar in December. The first thing really is an existing business that's making money. And I think when you look at at Wealth Migrate, to echo what David was saying, we've now got members in 109 countries. We've got investors in 46 countries. So that's people that have physically taken money out of their pocket and invested. We've had $68.3 million, invested through the platform. We've done over 1,600 transactions, all on the blockchain. We've got a team of over 60 people on 5 different continents. The thing I'm proudest of is that we've got a higher than 70% reinvestment rate. We've paid out dividends, and we've also won a lot of awards. The last thing that's important with an existing business is that a lot of these white papers have wonderful ideas. They're going to change the world, which is magic. Except I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years, and I know how difficult it is to make $1. Wealth Migrate is pre-profit, post-revenue. And for the last 2 years running, we've actually posted more than $1 million in revenue. And this year, we're well on track to substantially increase where we're going. The second thing is the existing team. And, can they actually execute in any market? So again, not just a rising market, but also a difficult market. And I think one of the things that I'm most grateful for, and you can see David is here as one of the advisors on the board. You've got Justin Clark that has run marketplaces in 18 different countries and been doing this 20 years. Martin Freeman, that's one of the most experienced people in fintech in the space and moving to New York. Joyce Koffler is one of the top 10 ladies in fintech in America. Paul Nadira has been globally recognized for more than 10 years as Mr. Compliance, running the oldest equity crowdfunding platform in the world out of Australia. Dr. Dolph DeRoos is sort of part of he wrote the book Real Estate Riches and is very much a global authority on real estate education. Henny and Peter Feenstra are not that well known, but are extremely wealthy based on their 30 years plus experience in international real estate and specifically commercial real estate. And then Michael Turpin, Richard Titus, and David are all assisting us primarily in the blockchain and setting up a decentralized company like he spoke of. And that's not to mention the entire leadership team, which is now broad-based and covers all the major areas. And the last thing that I wanted to say is that, the most important thing really is it comes down to supply and demand. There needs to be mass adoption and demand of what you're looking for. And, Peter Diamante says the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities. No matter where you travel in the world, the wealth gap is a problem. Income inequality is a problem. The middle class is had enough of working hard, paying taxes, and not being able to retire. And it's a massive problem. And wherever that massive problem exists, equally a massive opportunity exists. And that's why we've had such tremendous growth. If you look at our growth in members, we've been growing over the last 12 months by 1.93% per day, 63.9% per month. And what's interesting, we haven't even finished January. We've had more people sign up in January 2018 than we had in the whole of 2016. If you look at this, Kevin kindly did this for us. This is a map of where our members are based around the world. So 109 countries around the world, which is more than half the planet. Then if you take the money side, transactions is actually how the platform makes money. You can see here that since 2013, we've grown. But what's important, from 2016 to 2017, we grew by 3 times. And this year, at a minimum, we're looking at doing more than 2,000 transactions. And what that correlates to is where our investors are based around the world. And like I said to you, 46 countries. And this is, David, what you're talking about, where there's really viral and network growth, network effects, because we've only really done marketing in China and South Africa, and the rest has sort of taken care of itself. One thing that really differentiates us is that we believe the true opportunity is the emerging markets, the hundreds of millions of people that are joining the middle class in the emerging markets. We look for countries with large population, urbanization, and internet adoption. And over the next 10 years, the countries we're focusing on have an increase of 1.2 billion people joining that sector. And when you look at the global capital flows, to date, billions and billions of dollars have moved around the world in real estate, but it's primarily been the top 1%. We want to help the middle class in terms of where we're actually looking. And so if you want to get into the details of how the Wealthy Coin works, we've got a very detailed white paper, which is now live. You can see the different ecosystems. You can see how it works. You can see the different partners, how they earn. There's a much more detailed diagram here where, again, if you go into the white paper, you can fully understand this, and an even more detailed one here of how the Wealthy Coin works and all the value adds that are really part of it. But the part that I wanted to share with you is that what the Wealthy Coin is doing is really unlocking this entire ecosystem, and not just working within the Wealth Migrate ecosystem, but actually working with other crowdfunding sites, private equity, real estate, REITs, etc., and really unlocking global, a global marketplace when it comes to real estate. And so I wanted to share with you something tonight that is quite exciting for us, and it's what we call our bounty program. And Kevin kindly uploaded the video, so I'm going to hand over. You can see Nick here on this video. Program, something we are really excited about, and we are a community company. We've been built by our community. We've got about 130 wealth partners around the world, and I believe it's the greatest asset we've got in our organization. And now really we're wanting to take that to a whole nother level. And like David actually said earlier, imagine if people were making videos or doing their own webinars or even hosting their own events. And really the bounty program is very much an abundance mindset. It's if we win, we win together, and 1 + 1 can equal 11. I'm not sure, Kevin, if there's questions or if Tudor wants to add anything in terms of what was said there.
No, absolutely. Tudor is online. But so Tudor, is there anything you'd like to add?
Okay, so I know if you want, I can just quickly go through each one of the campaigns that the bounty will actually contain, so that everyone can understand it properly.
Yeah, look, we are almost at the end of our webinar time, but perhaps if you could give a summarized version. We will be, of course, publishing this within the coming week for those who are interested in participating.
Okay,
so can I share my
the,
screen with you, or are you just going to talk?
sorry, can you repeat that?
You're just going to talk it through. You don't have a screen that I can share with you.
I'm on phone, so I don't actually have a screen that I can share.
Okay, great. Over to you.
Okay, so the bounty program is going to contain 4 social campaigns and 3 campaigns which are non-social. The social ones are Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Telegram. For Facebook, for example, people, they can go and like the official page, and they also have to do 2 shares or posts about Wealthy every week until the end of the campaign. For Twitter, the same goes, but in this case, they have to do 5 tweets because on Twitter, the rate of posting is much greater. On Reddit, they can just create different threads and posts or comments which include Wealthy, or basically promote or explain how to invest into Wealthy and so on. And then they get rated basically for how many valid posts or threads they make, because they need to obtain at least a minimum of 15 upvotes in order for their posts or threads to be considered valid. For Telegram, they just have to join the actual Telegram group, and they need to engage in active discussions at least twice a week. Then for all of the other people who don't actually want to participate in the social campaigns, we have content, translations, and signatures on Bitcoin Talk. For Bitcoin Talk, for those of you who are on the forum, they can just wear the Wealthy signature, which we have actually designed already, and they can promote Wealthy on the forum every time that they make a comment, because the signature always appears in the bottom of the comment. And for content and translations, this is mostly for people that are more creative, because they can pretty much create any type of article or video or instructionable about the company itself, or about how to invest, or everything that can be considered an ICO review. And they can simply post it, whether it's in English, Russian, Korean, Chinese, or so on, in order to promote the project and what it actually stands for. And then we have the translations, where people take your official announcement thread and the white paper, and they translate it into over 20 languages, and afterwards they post it in the local boards on Bitcoin Talk, so that everyone can engage in discussions and participate in the ICO, even though their main language might not be English. So that's pretty much the summarized version of it, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. Well,
thanks so much,
much,
Tudor. As I'm sure there will be quite a few questions with regards to that, as Nick has constantly said, he is available in the Telegram group as well as privately through Telegram. So we really do encourage everybody in the community to join that Telegram group, as that's pretty much the central place where we will be putting everything and all the information will be shared. So, I mean, thanks very much, Judah, for coming on in terms of, coming on through the phone and sort of giving that background. Scott,
Kevin,
back over to you. I know we usually like to end off with answering some questions. The time is rather tight, and I did try and ask those questions throughout the webinar this evening. But yeah, we've got 2 minutes.
So listen,
how would you like to go about it?
Just quickly, if you could, Kevin, if you could post the Telegram chat group in the chat group, and for those that are watching the recording, it'll be down below in the YouTube, in the section part. All I wanted to do is, we've got a video which I'm not going to play now. It's a 5-minute long video, which explains what the wealthy coin is and how, to come back to David's point, how it's going to, effectively be the catalyst to grow the entire ecosystem. In terms of the white paper, someone asked a question around the use of funds. There's a very detailed breakdown of the use of funds and what is actually happening within the wealth, the wealthy coin creation. And the other one that I quite like is that we've actually partnered with Hero X to run an incentive prize, and also looking at doing a movie with one of the top producers on the Wealth Gap. Kevin's got some wonderful ideas. This diagram is quite an important diagram, which again you'll find in the white paper, where you can actually see the different levels of what we will unlock in terms of the wealthy coin, based on the funding. We've got a hard cap of 30 million. And what's really important here from our perspective is that the higher up the chain we go, the closer we'll get to democratizing wealth, just like the Statue of Liberty stands for democracy for everybody. And again, the details are in the white paper. The timing in terms of where it is, it's literally going live now in February. And like you said, the bounty program with the card sale going live in early March. What is important though is anyone that is signed up on the Wealth Migrate platform. So if you go on and sign on the Wealth Migrate platform, I'm very excited to say that the guys from Blockable and our tech team have engineered a way that we will be able to airdrop coins to you. So every single member of the Wealth Migrate platform is going to get coins, and will also be helped with how the bounty program will work in terms of the process. And also, if you've done your KYC on the Wealth Migrate platform, you won't have to redo it again to be able to get wealthy coins. And so, Kevin, that was all from my side. If there are a few questions, and if David doesn't mind, and/or I can stay online and try and answer them, I don't mind staying online for a while and answering as many questions as I can.
Okay, if we do look at just the one question that we didn't sort of answer was just David explained sort of the concept of decentralization. Someone asked, what is your perception of with regards to permissioned hyperledger applications such as Sawtooth and Fabric? Do you have any comments on those?
Yeah, the same as Ripple. Wonderful application of the technology, and not a true blockchain. It shouldn't be called a blockchain. The permissionless nature of blockchain is a fundamental part of decentralization. Once you have to have permission from somebody to do something, it is not decentralized anymore. So good luck to them, and I am not playing there.
There are quite a few questions just around certain exchanges. People saying, I don't want to buy Bitcoin right now. I'd like to buy altcoins or Ethereum, or what exchange should I use? And we've got questions, people asking that from the US, saying certain exchanges are not taking new members, and and so from all over, from the US, from Asia, from Africa, I guess the answer is there are about 1,000 odd exchanges if you look, on CoinMarketCap. But is there anything you'd like to comment on there, David?
Yeah. So as much as I am in favor of inclusivity, the difficulty in the on-ramps is positive in the sense that the level of enthusiasm would pump values even higher to potentially unreasonable heights that are not substantiated by the concrete things that the projects behind the tokens are doing, if it were even easier, right? So yeah, it's hard, it's complicated, it's not user friendly, takes a long time. All the exchanges are flooded. It will be easier, more inclusive as the infrastructure develops. And one of the important infrastructural developments of 2018 is going to be the availability of decentralized exchanges, which are also going to be a response to the regulatory issues, because it is beyond, the regulators are not going to be able to shut them down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've just have put a poll up quickly. At the beginning of this webinar, we didn't remind everyone, we really like to usually keep it quite interactive, and we've been so intrigued by what you've been talking about, David, we've actually forgotten to run the polls this evening. So please, if people are interested, please do answer that poll while we talk. You can still hear us while the poll is up.
Can I ask a quick one here?
Yes, absolutely.
So one of the people asked, what is the price of wealthy coins? So they're launching at 10 US cents. So we're keeping them really low on purpose. Our mission is to empower 1 billion people, and we want to make sure that they can be available to everyone. Gavin asked, David, does the ICO opportunity pass your secret sauce test? I'd like to think it does, because you've already invested. I don't know if there's anything more you want to say on that.
We don't have the time to run through, because there are literally more than a dozen different indicators that drive our investment decisions. And Wealth Migrate corresponded very well to many of these, going over a given threshold. And we are really excited about the Wealthy token and the opportunities that it gives to people who purchase them, and then to the people who use them. It is very important for the token to be used, and we believe that the uses of the Wealthy token will be numerous and valuable to promote the Wealth Migrate platform and participation by people.
Great. There's another question here just around jurisdictions. You know, what jurisdictions are looking favorable around the sort of token sale arena? You know, there have been some that have, you know, sort of gone up and down. You know, a lot of people were using Switzerland, and then a lot of people ended up in places like Gibraltar or Malta or Singapore. You know, who's looking very friendly towards the blockchain, and companies that are really using the blockchain, you know, to actually make the world a better place?
So we didn't touch upon the distinction between a security token and a utility token, and really the jurisdictions that should be able to attract projects are those that allow this distinction to stay. Too many are leaning towards the US interpretation that every token is a security, and it shouldn't be that case. Just as you know, not every piece of money is made out of metal. We have banknotes, and if your view as a central bank is, unless it's made out of metal, it is not money, or that if you use a paper check, you are a scammer per definition. Well, as finance evolves, there are new features. And just because regulators didn't have utility tokens before, that doesn't mean that they have to look at it from the lens of their security point of view. Yeah, they have a hammer and everything looks a nail to them, but they would ruin the opportunities for projects if that is the only way they applied it. Malta, from my point of view today, looks to be in a leading position according to these criteria.
Okay, no, great. That's great. Scott, I have gone through a number of the questions, and I believe that most of them have been answered. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, just give me 2 seconds. There's a couple here that are just more sort of operational stuff. So Gillian asked, is Wealth Migrate, what's the connection between Wealth Migrate and the Wealthy Coin? So Wealth Migrate is a platform where people can use fiat currency and or Bitcoin to invest in real estate investments in England, Australia, America, and South Africa at the moment. The Wealthy Coin is effectively the catalyst that is going to unlock the entire solution. So you'll be able to get all the services, you'll be able to use it as a far more efficient way for transferring money across country, et cetera. So there is a difference between the two. And Gillian mentioned that she was a teacher. Ironically, I spoke to someone just yesterday. Please understand that real estate investment, nothing is 100% safe, but real estate investment is tangible. It exists. You're investing in a building that's earning a passive income. It's different from investing in a cryptocurrency that primarily is going to be based on capital growth, etc., and at a use case. They're very, very different investments, and you do need to understand that. Someone else asked, is all this information going to be in a written version? Yes, it's in the white paper. And so what I've just discussed is in a 50-page document where you can go into a huge amount more detail. And if you go to wealthy.io and literally put your name and details in there, we'll let you know. I mean, Kevin and I and the rest of the team are literally going through the final version of the white paper right now. I got it this morning, where we're just having the final sign-offs before we can get it out. The link to the Telegram group has been sent, and again, for anyone who wants the recording, drop below. The video, there will be a recording of the video. It will be put up on YouTube like we normally do. And I think that is all the questions that were just from
the last one that just came in was just from Ian talking about the token, and just asking, will it be loaded into his MyEther wallet? The tokens will be, of course, into an ERC20 compliant wallet. Now, for the people who are online tonight who are real estate investors who are saying, what the heck is Kevin talking about? We will be assisting everybody with that. That's why we're asking everyone to join the Telegram group. Nick, as well as myself, are going to be putting together videos as well as documents explaining exactly what is required of people so that they can understand it. As David has already mentioned, there is a lot. It is early days in the blockchain crypto space, and there are a lot of exchanges out there that are quite confusing, and there's a lot of new terminology. So for those who are new to this game, we are going to be with you along the road so that you can get through it. And for those of you who are well versed, this is your opportunity through the bounty program, to actually make that content yourself, and work with us to actually spread the word so that we can ensure that the crowd sale is a success.
Yeah, and there was one question here. I'm invested in the Entrepreneur Resort. So again, the Entrepreneur Resort is a project which was on the Wealth Migrate platform. They are separate, although we're working very closely with Roger and his team. And ironically, I'm actually flying next week to go and be part of a whole. We've got a global partnership together. And I see a future where one day you'll be able to use Wealthy Coins to be able to invest in projects like Entrepreneur Resort. But that's just an example. I really want to wrap it up just from a time perspective. I know there were a huge amount of questions that were also sent through, Kevin, which I think are very valid. And what I'd like to do is we'll build an FAQ, and also maybe we can answer these on the next webinar, where we maybe keep the content less and do more FAQs. I don't know what you think, David, and whether you're prepared to share it But what might be really useful is we look at changing one of the topics and actually make it about the 12 drivers and your secret sauce. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, thank you for putting me on the spot about that opportunity. And I'm a pretty open and transparent guy. I want to talk about it with my partners in Network Society Ventures as a firm. You know, I'm not running it alone, even if I'm the managing partner. We are moving towards feeling to be ready about sharing those criteria, and so I will let you know. I do believe that the topics that we have on the webinars are exciting as they are already, and maybe we will use a fifth one, to do something like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. So, from my perspective, I think you've got all the links here. Again, if you're watching the recording, click on the links below to get the information. We'll keep you updated. Join the Telegram group, and we'll keep you updated on information, news. If you've got any questions, we'll let you know as soon as the final version of the white papers are ready to go. And most importantly, we really encourage you to look at joining the Bounty program, not only so that you can benefit personally and create value in your own life, but also so that you can have a purposeful impact on the planet and help us solve the greatest challenge on the planet. And I think that's what is truly exciting here, is that in the old days, Mother Teresa had to sort of give up her life to go out there and change the world. And nowadays we can financially benefit while having a purposeful impact and changing the world. And that's why this community is so important. And so, from my perspective, Kevin and David, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. David, there's been so many messages tonight thanking you for your really inspirational messages that you've been sharing. I really appreciate your time. And Kevin, thank you for driving this and making sure that it's an ongoing success, as you always do. I really appreciate it. And to all of you that are online tonight, thank you for your valuable contributions. And like we said, we want to make the future webinars even more interactive. And so please participate, share it with your friends. Come join us at the next webinars. They're always better live because you can actually ask questions live. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. David, final thoughts? Kevin, final thoughts?
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the next webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see you again next week, Tuesday, same time. David won't be in the Caymans. Travel safely, David. And we'll see everybody next week. Great. Thanks, everybody. Good night. Good morning. Great to see you.